Out, now. The voice cracked through the hangar like a whip. McKenzie Taylor barely had time to register the sting in his words before her training manual was snatched from her fingers. The coffee she'd set on the table tipped over, staining her white blouse in slow motion. The instructor didn't flinch. "The F-47 Thunderbolt isn't a toy," he sneered. "And it sure as hell isn't for kitchen recruits." Laughter erupted from the mostly male trainees. One pulled out his phone. Another leaned back with a smug grin. "Why not stick to flying a blender, sweetheart?" The instructor tossed her application toward a nearby trash bin. It bounced off the rim and landed face up. His voice dropped to a mock scientific tone. "Women just don't have the cognitive bandwidth for aerial combat. It's not sexism, it's biology." Security appeared at his signal. Mackenzie's fingers reflexively dipped into her inner jacket pocket, brushing against a rusted pair of pilot wings, her grandfather's, worn smooth by war and time. She didn't flinch, didn't beg. Her shoulders squared, her eyes locked onto the instructor with eerie calm. That half-smile she gave him as they let her out? It wasn't surrender, it was warning. McKenzie M. Taylor had never known how to quit. At 32, she rented a one-bedroom just outside San Diego, where the sound of roaring jets overhead played like a morning hymn. From her balcony, she watched aircraft rise through the haze while sipping her coffee, each takeoff reminding her of what she still hadn't touched. Not yet. She was a former Air Force systems engineer with a mechanical degree from MIT. Her lineage stretched deep into military soil. Her father flew helicopters during Desert Storm. Her grandfather braved missions over hostile territory. Both were decorated. Both were respected. But McKenzie? She carried their legacy while bearing the weight they never had to, walking into rooms where her skin and gender arrived before her resume. After an honorable discharge, she joined North Star Aerospace. The paycheck was generous, the respect was measured, but none of that replaced the dream: to fly what she once only built. She applied 3 times to Peterson Advanced Flight Academy, the only civilian institute cleared to train pilots on the F-47. Each rejection bruised her, but didn't break her. Instead of sulking, she worked weekends, logged over 500 hours in civilian aircraft, and saved relentlessly. Then she changed tactics. She submitted one last application, only this time under M. Taylor no gender. Just credentials. The Academy said yes. What they didn't know was that during her Air Force stint, she'd helped design the very systems running under the F-47's titanium skin. She knew its balance under stress, knew how it responded to altitude. Better, in fact, than the very men now laughing at her. Her grandfather's wings, handed to her on his deathbed, were her vow. "You'll fly higher than any of us ever did," he'd whispered, placing them in her palm. She pinned them inside her flight jacket. Not for show. For armor. That morning she'd walked into Peterson Academy believing qualifications would finally eclipse prejudice. But now she stood in the parking lot, coffee dripping from her blouse, the sting of mockery fresh in her ears. Still, McKenzie Taylor wasn't leaving. Not today. Not ever. "Sweetheart, let's find you a dream that suits you better." The woman's voice was quiet, but the sting ran deep. Worse than locker room jokes or side eyes from instructors, this was legacy sabotage in real time, the kind that passes from mother to daughter, wrapped in concern and defeat. But McKenzie didn't flinch. She'd learned long ago that discouragement could be dressed up in care. Monday morning. First week. McKenzie walked into ground school 15 minutes early, notebook in hand. What greeted her wasn't preparation. It was insult. Lipstick scribbled across her desk. A kitchen whisk. A wooden spoon. An egg timer, set right in the center like a trophy. All arranged where her flight manual should have been. Her materials packet? Outdated. Half the technical sections missing. She raised the issue at the front office. The receptionist gave her a pained smile and shrugged. "Maybe try the women's restroom? I heard some of the guys thought it'd be funny." She didn't respond. She just walked out and went searching. In their 5-person study group, she wasn't chosen for her aerospace degree or Air Force record. Brad Wilson, a former Navy dropout with barely 200 logged hours, was made team leader. Instructor Daniels smiled as he handed out rolls. "Nothing personal, Taylor. Wilson just shows the command presence this program values. Command in Brad's case meant ignoring Mackenzie's ideas and dumping menial tasks on her. Take notes, he'd say. You're good at organizing. But the real test came during simulator week. While the others flew through standard settings, Mackenzie's sim opened with chaos. Lightning strikes, radio loss, and an onboard system crash. Stacked odds. Deliberate difficulty. Still, she adjusted, identified faults, managed altitude, and landed virtual wheels on the runway, clean. Better than most of them. Even the instructors looked up from their clipboards. Daniels just scoffed. Fluke, he muttered. We'll reset and do it again tomorrow. Something must have glitched. In emergency training, they were told to pair off. Mackenzie walked toward a group of trainees. They scattered. If I black out mid-flight, one of them said with a grin, I'd rather go down than be saved by Barbie. Laughter followed. Bet her hands can't even reach the rudder controls. The instructor watched, said nothing. Pick whoever you want, he said. This isn't kindergarten. So she practiced protocols with a maintenance mannequin. They called him her perfect co-pilot. Quiet and plastic. By the third week, the bullying had evolved. Colonel Peterson summoned her to his office. Mahogany desk, medals on the wall, photos with generals, every one of them male. You're disrupting class cohesion, he said, standing while she remained on her feet. No one learns well when there's a distraction. Maybe you'd be better off in our transport pilot track. Fewer demands. He scanned her up and down. More fitting, perhaps. She scored a perfect 100 on her aerodynamics test. The class average was 76. Instructor Reed stood in front of the group and said, Nobody gets that on their first try, especially not. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. He slashed her grade to 75, citing irregularities. When she challenged it, he cut her off. Take the pass and be grateful you're still here. Her body became a subject of review. At the midsummer evaluation, Mackenzie faced a panel. But not about flight aptitude, about fertility. Dr. Winters, the Academy's physician, leaned forward. You're aware the G-forces may disrupt menstrual health? Long-term risks? Your reproductive system? She stared back, eyes calm. No such concerns, sir. No man faced questions about his anatomy. Online, it got worse. A blog hinted that politics had lowered flight standards. A video circulated, chopped, misleading, only showing Mackenzie's early mistakes, not her recovery. It was titled, This is Why Women Shouldn't Fly. She watched the views rise, and said nothing. But inside, she was recording every name, every face. By week 8, the message was no longer subtle. Though no one named her directly, every policy shift, every side glance, every administrative change orbited McKenzie Taylor's presence. She wasn't just a trainee. She was the threat to the institution's illusion of tradition. An FAA evaluator arrived unannounced, clipboard always in hand, eyes always on her. He hovered in silence during simulations, his pen dragging across paper like a blade every time she so much as adjusted throttle late. No other student earned this attention. No other student had to. Then came the financial blow. A sudden payment discrepancy showed her account short by $5,000. The financial office gave her 48 hours to fix it, or she'd be suspended. It was the first she'd heard of it. No one else had faced that error. The timing? Not coincidence. Just before Phase 2 evaluations. She took an emergency loan. High interest, high pressure, no choice. Then came the blow wrapped in bureaucracy. A mid-program change in physical fitness standards. New height minimums. Arm span requirements. Upper body tests that had nothing to do with flying but everything to do with keeping women out. Peterson's announcement was matter of fact. Safety first, he said. These measures ensure only the best can handle advanced aircraft. Never mind Mackenzie had already handled every stress simulation thrown at her. Never mind she had outperformed most of her peers. She didn't complain, didn't argue. She studied longer, trained harder. And every night, alone in her apartment, she pulled her grandfather's wings from her jacket pocket and whispered, I didn't come this far to give up now. The metal was smooth, worn down by 3 generations of combat hands. It grounded her when the pressure threatened to crush her. Some mornings, too exhausted to think, she'd drag herself to the balcony to watch the jets scream overhead. Each afterburner left a trail of fire in the sky, and somewhere in that trail, she found herself again. The final exam loomed, a real flight in the F-47 Thunderbolt. Only the top 3 would fly. One would earn a job with the jet's manufacturer. McKenzie was ranked 4th. Despite outperforming Michael Connors on every written and simulator metric, he got the slot. Brad Wilson, Travis Baker, and Michael made the cut. She didn't. The night before the test flights, McKenzie stayed late in the sim room, replaying flight paths, questioning what more she could have done. Then she heard voices. Through the cracked door of the adjacent briefing room, she recognized them instantly. Colonel Peterson and Captain Reed. They were discussing a stabilizer issue she had once flagged during her Air Force days. An instability in the vector thrust system above 32,000 feet. A flaw she had tried to correct with a code patch that was dismissed because she was too junior. And a woman. Peterson sounded anxious. The manufacturer says it's within spec, but I don't trust it. As long as no one pushes the altitude envelope, we're fine. But McKenzie remembered Brad boasting earlier. I'm going to show off tomorrow. Big moves, high-altitude flare. She pushed open the door. You can't let them fly blind. Peterson turned sharply. You were eavesdropping? I was in the sim. You were loud. And you're talking about a defect that could kill someone. She reached into her flight bag and pulled out her credentials. You're looking at the engineer who wrote the fix. You buried it. Now your best trainee is about to walk straight into it. The room fell silent. Peterson's eyes narrowed. You're M. Taylor? The one who submitted the adaptive patch? McKenzie nodded. I'm the one who can fly that jet, demonstrate the risk, and save your boys from turning into fireballs. Let me in the cockpit. Or pray Brad doesn't try to impress the wrong person tomorrow. The discussion behind the closed office door stretched long into the evening. When Peterson finally returned, his decision was clear but begrudging. You'll fly last, he said, barely meeting her eyes. Not as a trainee, as a technical observer. This isn't a tryout. It's a risk assessment. McKenzie didn't argue. She nodded once. This wasn't justice. But it was a cockpit. That night, she didn't close her eyes once. Instead, she pored over technical specs, revisited her notes from years past, and drilled the counter procedures she had developed during her Air Force service. By sunrise, her body was heavy with fatigue, but her mind was sharp. She was ready to fly, to prevent a tragedy, even if it meant saving the very people who had tried to break her. The morning sky was pure glass, clear, still, perfect. A photographer's dream. A pilot's test. The F-47 Thunderbolt sat on the tarmac, its angled body catching the sun in long, liquid reflections. Military brass, press, and aviation execs stepped off their jets and lined the edges of the field. McKenzie stood alone, tucked to the side, unacknowledged by her classmates as they clapped each other on the back. Travis Baker was up first. His flight was clean, cautious, textbook safe. The audience gave polite claps, no sparks, no errors. Then Michael Connors took off. A bit bolder, one daring climb, but nothing exceptional. Then came Brad. With a smirk and a mock salute, he entered the cockpit like he was stepping onto a stage. From the start, he broke protocol. Low passes, sharp dives, a showboater with a jet that wasn't his to tame. The crowd gasped at his antics. The manufacturer's reps frowned. Then Brad radioed in. He was climbing, fast, straight toward 32,000 feet. McKenzie froze, watching the telemetry. Colonel, she said, not blinking. He's about to trigger the stabilizer fault. Peterson looked pale. On the monitor, the F-47 began a high-angle vector climb, exactly the maneuver McKenzie had warned about. Then, on screen, chaos. The jet wobbled violently. Its streamlined path veered. Control inputs visibly conflicted. Fly-by-wire fighting the stabilizers. Brad's voice erupted over the radio, sharp with panic. Control! I've lost it! System's failing! I can't level her out! McKenzie didn't wait. She snatched the radio from the technician's hands. "Brad, it's McKenzie Taylor. Listen to me. Override the computer. Manual control. Reduce thrust to 40%. Use the left rudder. Do not follow the system prompts. They're reversed." Silence. Then, crackling. "Manual override. 40% thrust. Left rudder. Copy." Seconds passed like minutes. Then the jet steadied. Still unstable, but no longer spiraling. Brad limped the aircraft back toward the runway. The landing was messy, but it was a landing. He survived. The crowd was dead silent. Peterson turned slowly toward McKenzie. "Suit up," he said, his voice hoarse. "Take the second jet. Show us what that was supposed to look like." Inside the backup F-47, McKenzie found stillness. The panel was familiar, each switch a word in a language she'd never forgotten. The controls answered her touch like a memory. She called for clearance. "Thunderbolt 2, cleared for departure. Standard route only, Taylor. No improvisation." "Understood, Control," she replied, hands steady. But she knew her flight wouldn't be standard. As the aircraft roared down the runway and lifted into open sky, she felt the weight of her grandfather's wings under her flight suit. This was her air now, and she intended to own every foot of it. The landing was smoother than breath, her wheels kissing the runway with impossible grace. When the canopy lifted and McKenzie stepped down from the jet, the crowd stood in stunned quiet. Then the manufacturer's chief engineer stepped forward, awe written across every feature. "That was the most controlled handling I've seen in this aircraft," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "How did you even know about the stabilizer integration failure? We've had entire teams chasing that for over a year." Before she could answer, another executive leaned in, director of product development, clipboard tucked beneath his arm. "Forget knowing," he said. "How did you solve it in real time? Our top test pilots haven't managed that." McKenzie stood tall, her voice even. "I'm the same M. Taylor who submitted the adaptive stabilizer patch 3 years ago. Back when I was a junior engineer in the Air Force, working on this very aircraft." She paused. "The fix has been sitting in your archives since then. Ignored, I assume, because the name didn't sound like someone you'd picture in a cockpit." Murmurs erupted. Executives huddled near the hangar edge, whispering urgently while occasionally casting wide-eyed glances in her direction. Across the tarmac, Brad Wilson sat in a medic's chair, hooked to oxygen, eyes still unfocused. The arrogance was gone. What replaced it was something McKenzie recognized, the silence of someone who'd seen death peek around the corner. Reporters swarmed Colonel Peterson. Sweating beneath the flash of cameras and sharp questions, he finally offered a statement. "We clearly failed to recognize Miss Taylor's full capabilities," he admitted, voice rigid but public. "Her flight today wasn't just the top performance of this cohort. It's the finest execution in this academy's history. Effective immediately, we will begin a review of our admissions and evaluation policies." It was the first time he'd said her name without a sneer, but it was already too late to control the story. Clips of McKenzie's flight flooded aviation forums. Flight instructors shared technical breakdowns of her maneuvers. Young women reposted footage under hashtags like "Chew, fly like a girl," and "Young wings have no gender," lifting McKenzie to viral status. A symbol not of defiance, but precision, discipline, excellence. Captain Reed, whose scorn had once cut deeper than protocol, approached hesitantly. Gone was his swagger. In its place, shame, and something close to regret. "I misjudged you," he said quietly. "And all the women like you I never gave a chance. My daughter wants to fly. I've been telling her not to." He looked at the ground. "That ends now." McKenzie gave a small nod. "It's not just about misjudgment, Captain. It's about the trail of damage left behind. How many great pilots never made it past your desk?" His silence said more than an apology could. Later, Brad approached her. Unsteady, but upright. "You saved my life," he said simply. "I don't know what I'd be if you hadn't spoken up. I owe you everything." "You can thank me," she replied, "by judging people by their skills, not by how they look, or what you assume they can't do. And respect the aircraft. It's not a stage. It's a responsibility. That evening, the Academy held a revised graduation. Brad stood on stage, voice cracking as he addressed the room. I wouldn't be standing here if not for McKenzie Taylor. She saved me. After all I did to tear her down. That's the kind of pilot I want to be. She stepped down from the aircraft, boots meeting tarmac with quiet finality. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was reverent. The chief engineer from the manufacturer approached, his expression caught somewhere between disbelief and admiration. That was the cleanest demonstration I've seen in the F-47, he said clearly, his voice carrying across the airstrip. How did you even know the stabilizer system would react that way? Before McKenzie could respond, another voice chimed in, this one belonging to the company's product development lead. The real question is, how did you fix it? Mid-flight. No panic. No hesitation. Our test pilots have been chasing that bug for months. McKenzie met their eyes calmly. I'm the same M. Taylor who submitted the stabilizer correction algorithm 3 years ago. It's been buried in your archives ever since. The only thing disqualifying it was the name at the bottom of the report. Their faces changed. Recognition dawning not just of her skills, but of what they had missed and why. Behind her, Brad Wilson sat on a stretcher, his cocky grin now replaced by the sobering look of a man who'd come inches from death. Colonel Peterson, flanked by reporters and microphones, was forced to speak publicly. Today we witnessed what real excellence looks like, he said stiffly. Miss Taylor didn't just outperform her peers, she identified and corrected a systemic failure we overlooked. Her performance has changed how this institution views merit, and how it should be defined. It was the first honest sentence he'd spoken in her presence. By evening, clips of her flight circulated online, headlines flooding aviation networks. Engineer pilot saves F-47 from catastrophic failure. A sky rewritten. Across social media, young women posted her maneuvers with hashtags like "Fly like her" and "Swatch wings, don't discriminate." McKenzie's name became a rallying point, for pilots, for engineers, for every woman told no, for reasons they couldn't control. Captain Reed approached, uneasy. I was wrong, he said quietly. About you, and about what my daughter might be capable of. I won't hold her back anymore. McKenzie didn't gloat. She just answered with conviction. It's not enough to admit you were wrong. You have to change what you allow. Think about all the women this academy turned away without ever seeing what they could have become. Later, Brad Wilson came to her with something she never expected. Humility. You didn't just save the jet, he said. You saved me. And I've never been more wrong about someone in my life. She nodded. Then do better. Respect the cockpit, respect the people in it. That's the debt. At the graduation ceremony, Brad took the mic and spoke to the crowd. If not for McKenzie Taylor, I wouldn't be here. She saved me. After all I did to dismiss her, she's the kind of pilot I want to become. The applause was loud, earned. Soon after, the Academy launched a new scholarship, the William Taylor Memorial Grant for Women in Flight, named after McKenzie's grandfather. The FAA evaluator who once scrutinized her now invited her to serve as a regulatory consultant for future flight safety reviews. The manufacturer? They hired her as both lead engineer and test pilot, offering her double the original salary, along with full authority over the F-47's next evolution. A week later, McKenzie led an all-women formation flight in 4 upgraded Thunderbolts. Each pilot in her wing had once been told she didn't belong. On the observation deck below, a group of young girls looked up, wide-eyed, as afterburners streaked across the sky. At their side stood McKenzie, pinning wings onto one girl's jacket. The sky doesn't ask your gender, she said. It only answers your courage. And with that, she turned toward the horizon, her grandfather's wings now sewn beside her own. Not as trophies, as proof.